Composite functions are when you put two or more functions together and you make a single function out of them. They're expressed like this, and you say f of g of x. Sometimes there's nothing between the f and the g, f of g of x, or you can write f o g of x. Sometimes there's three, like it could be f, g, and h. All right, and really what you're doing is you're going to be told f of x is equal to something, g of x is equal to something. And in this case, what you're doing is you're passing, first of all, you're doing the h of x. And wherever the output of that is, just say it's a 6, you put that into g. And you put 6 into g, and you're going to get something out of that, say 50. And then you put that 50 into f. So it's one that, so let's have a go at doing some of that stuff. If you're requested to do, for example, work out f of 3, well, you simply put a 3 in instead of the x. So you're passing a value of 3 into the x. So you're going to get 2 times 3 to be squared plus 2 times 3, which is 2 times 9. 18 plus 2 times 3 is 6, 24. And the same with all of these. But if I'm asked to do something like f of g of x, so what I do is I now need to pass through a g of x into the f of x. Well, that's going to be f, and now g of x is equal to, if you look here, g of x is equal to 4x. So that's going to be 4x goes here. So it's x of 4x, f of 4x. Remember, so up here I had f of 3. Now I've got f of 4 of x. Up here I put 3 in instead of the x's. Now I'm going to put 4x in instead of the x's. So I'm going to have f of this is equal to 2 times. And now instead of having x squared, I'm going to put this 4x in. So I'm going to have 4x to be squared. And then I now work over to this bit. So I'm going to have plus 2x. So it's plus 2 times. And again, instead of putting in x in, or putting in this case the 3, I'm going to put in the 4x in. So that's 4x. And then I multiply that out as appropriate. So 2 times 16x squared plus 8x. Okay, that's f of g of x. Let's have a look. Of course, that will be different from g of f of x. Let's have a look at that. Well, that's going to be, look down here, g of f of x is equal to g of f of x, and f of x is 2x squared plus 2x. You put that here. Then you go up and have a look at g of x, which is 4 times the input. So that means I'm now going to have g of f of x is equal to 4 times 2x squared plus 2x. And that's going to give me 8x squared plus 8x. And that's g of f of x, which is different from f of g of x. I mean, completely different. Okay. Obviously, well, not obviously, but you can have things like f of g of x, or sorry, f of g of h of x. And it's the same. You just take your h function, you put the input into that, you plug it into the g, and so on. So having 3 functions or 4 functions or 5 functions works exactly the same way. For the leaving certificate or any other certificate I've ever seen, no more than 3 functions go together. Occasionally you're asked to decompose a function back into a number of other functions. Here's a nice way to do it, which doesn't require too much thinking. So I take my input, x, and the first thing I'm going to do is with that is I'm going to square it. So that's this number to be squared. I then add 2. I take that input and I pass it to the next function and I add 2 to it. I then pass that into the next function and I times it by 3. And then finally I pass that into the next function and I add 7. So I square it, I add 2, I multiply by 3, I add 7. And you remember, if we have a function, I want to do, if I write a function f, g, h, you know I do the h one first, then I do the g, and then I do the f. In our case, I want to do this a function first, and then I want to do the b function, and then I want to do and cd. Okay, so I've got 4 functions here, d, c, b, a. My a function is square it, so if I take a number 3 and I pass it through, I will square it first, then I will add 2 to it, then I will do a c, which is actually multiplying it by 3, and finally I've now added 7 onto it as well. So there's 4 functions. Let's just do the same thing again, but maybe just use less functions. Maybe let's do 3 this time. So x, I'm going to go in, and this time I'm going to square it, and I'm going to add 2 all in one go. And then I'm going to pass that through and I'm going to multiply it by 3. And then I'm going to then add 7. So that'll be A, B, C. And so these 3 functions, I want to do A first, then I want to do B, and finally I want to do C. So that'll be CBA. So I've now chosen to do 3. I wonder could I make 2 functions out of it? Let's try that in a minute. So here's another function. I've now decomposed it into 2. So my input comes in, my x comes in, I square it and I add 2 to it, and then I pass on to the next function, which times it by 3 and adds 7. So I want to do the a function first, followed by the b. So let's try b of a with a number. Let's try it with 4. So a of 4 is equal to b, and a of 4 is equal to, let's point up to the a, well that's equal to square it first, which is 16 plus 2 is 18. So it's b of 18. And b of 18 is equal to, I'm going to multiply it by 3 and then add 7. So 3 18s is 54 plus 7 is equal to 61 if my sums are right. So 61. And let's just see if we put 4 into here, we see we're going to get 4 4s is 16 plus 2 is 18 by 3 is 54 plus 7 is 61. So you can break it down. I think it's quite a nice way because otherwise it can be quite confusing how to break them down. So it's a tiny bit of practice for you now if you wish. Okay, here's some practice for you. You might be able to use some of your newfound skills on these ones. Okay, good luck. Talk to you soon.